Okay, so you know how sometimes you're trying to open a package, like one of those plastic clamshell things, and it's like impossible. You know the ones I mean for electronics or like even some toys. It's like they designed them to be impossible to open. But anyway, those packages, they're everywhere,
Yeah.
right? And they're kind of a pain, but they're also like a hidden gateway into this whole world, the world of manufacturing. Like most of us don't even think about how that stuff gets made. And that's actually what we're diving into today, vacuum forming machine operation. We're going to go behind the scenes of how those machines work. And get this, we're also going to talk about how knowing about this stuff can actually help you get a job. You'd be surprised. So, our starting point for this deep dive is RoleCatcher.com. It's a website with a bunch of career resources. And they have this really detailed career guide for vacuum forming machine operators. So, get ready because this is about to get interesting. First things first, what exactly is vacuum forming? The career guide explains it like this. Imagine you have this thin sheet of plastic and you heat it up until it's like all bendy. Then you use a vacuum and a mold to shape it into whatever you want, like car dashboards or those clamshell packages I was just complaining about, even like custom prosthetics. It's all done with vacuum forming.
What's really cool about vacuum forming is how precise it is. It's not just melting plastic. You have to get the heat and the pressure just right, and the timing too. Operators have to understand the science behind it, like if the plastic's too hot, it'll be too thin. And if it's too cool, it won't take the shape of the mold.
It's like baking, but with plastic and a giant vacuum.
Exactly. And just like with baking, the type of plastic you use is super important. Different plastics have different properties. So operators need to know how to adjust the machine settings depending on what kind of plastic they're using, like high-impact polyceramine versus polyethylene.
Wow, that's way more technical than I realized. The guide also talks about the career path of a vacuum forming machine operator. And it's not just pushing buttons. There are three main levels: entry level junior operator and senior operator. Entry level is like you're just starting out, learning from the more experienced operators. Then, when you become a junior operator, you're running the machines on your own. You're also troubleshooting problems and even training new people. And by the time you're a senior operator, you're like the vacuum forming master. You're in charge of multiple machines, making sure everything runs smoothly. You're even working with engineers to improve the process.
And speaking of improving processes, it's crazy how much technology is changing the game. The guide mentions enhanced features on the newer machines, which just goes to show how important it is to keep learning in this field. Because those machines are always evolving, and the skills you need to operate them are evolving too.
It's like anything else, you got to stay ahead of the curve. So it's not just about knowing how to use the machine in front of you, it's about being ready for whatever comes next.
Exactly. Now, before we get too deep into the technical stuff, you might be thinking, okay, but what does any of this have to do with me? I'm not trying to work in a factory. And that's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, most of us aren't like, sign me up for plastic factory labor. But here's the thing. The skills you need to be good at something like vacuum forming, they're actually useful in a lot of other jobs too. And realizing that can be huge when you're trying to find a new job.
It's all about like making connections. We tend to think of our skills in terms of the specific job we do,
Yeah.
but when you zoom out and think about the core skills you're using, it opens up a lot of possibilities.
Okay, so like what kind of skills are we talking about here?
Well, if you look at the career guide, it lists a bunch of key skills for vacuum forming machine operators. Things like problem solving, attention to detail, making sure the quality is good. Think about it. If a machine operator is having problems with a sheet not forming right, they got to figure out what's going wrong.
Hmm.
And they got to pay close attention to the temperature, the pressure, the timing. They're constantly checking and adjusting things to make sure the final product is good.
Now that you mention it, those skills do seem pretty transferable. Like I've never operated one of those machines. But I can see how my experience in, say, event planning has involved a lot of problem solving and attention to detail. Making sure everything runs smoothly, the decorations are perfect, the guests are happy.
Exactly. Or
Yeah.
think about a project manager. They have to deal with delays, keep their team on track. That's not so different from a vacuum forming machine operator figuring out why they're behind schedule. The situation is different, but the core skills are really similar.
This is wild. So it's like by looking at a totally different field, we can get a fresh perspective on our own skills. We might even discover hidden talents or realize we have more experience in certain areas than we thought.
Exactly. And that's where a platform like RoleCatcher.com comes in. Remember, we talked about their AI tools. They're designed to help you show off those transferable skills when you're job hunting.
Okay, so we're finally getting back to RoleCatcher. Tell me more. How does this AI magic work? And how can it help me land my dream job?
Okay, so picture this. You're on a job site, and you see a listing that looks really interesting. But instead of just skimming it and hoping your resume has the right keywords, you use RoleCatcher's browser plugin, RoleCatcher.capture, to save the job to your profile. And here's where the AI comes in. It analyzes the job description, really digs into it, to figure out exactly what skills, experience, even personality traits the employer is looking for.
It's like having a cheat code for job postings. So instead of guessing what the hiring manager wants to see, the AI tells you straight up.
Exactly. But it gets even better. RoleCatcher doesn't just tell you what the employer wants. It also looks at your skills and experience based on your resume and profile. And then it connects the dots. It shows you how well your background matches up with the job requirements.
Okay, that's huge. So it's not just about stuffing my resume with keywords, it's about showing off my most relevant skills in a way that directly answers what the employer is looking for.
Exactly. And for the skills where there might be a gap, RoleCatcher helps you figure out where you need to improve. It's like having your own personal career coach.
Speaking of the job application process, can we talk about applicant tracking systems? You know those ATS things everyone's always talking about?
Ah, yes, the gatekeepers of the modern job search. Basically, an ATS is software that companies use to manage all the resumes they get. It's like a digital filter. It scans each application for certain keywords and qualifications before a human ever even sees it.
I've heard of ATS, but I'm not really sure what they do. Why are they so important?
So imagine you're a hiring manager, and you have to go through hundreds, maybe even thousands of applications for one job. It would be impossible to read every single one carefully right. That's where the ATS comes in. It's the first line of defense. It uses algorithms to pick out the applications that best match the job requirements. And it's looking for specific keywords. Keywords related to the skills, experience, and education listed in the job description. If your application doesn't have those keywords, you might get overlooked even if you're perfect for the job.
Okay, now that sounds kind of scary. It's like I'm playing keyword bingo with my future. But how does RoleCatcher help with this? It's not like they can reprogram those ATS systems for us, right?
You're right, they can't reprogram the systems. But remember that AI analysis we talked about? That's where RoleCatcher really shines. It's like RoleCatcher knows the secret handshake. It figures out what keywords the ATS is looking for, and then it helps you use those keywords in your application, so you don't get screened out before a human even sees your resume.
So RoleCatcher is like the translator between my skills and the technology companies are using. It's like having a secret weapon for my job search.
Exactly. And this goes back to what we were saying about continuous learning. In today's job market, you can't just stop learning once you get a job. You got to keep growing and adapting, just like those vacuum forming machine operators always learning about the newest machines. We have to be proactive about our own professional development too.
So it's not just about getting a job, it's about making sure you're still employable in 5 or 10 years. What you're saying is by looking at the skills that are important in different fields, even fields we don't know much about, we can get ideas for how to improve our own skills, like maybe seeing how much problem solving is needed for vacuum forming makes me think, hey, maybe I should look into project management roles.
Exactly. It's about being open to new possibilities and realizing that our skills can be valuable in a lot of different ways. The job market is only getting more competitive, and the people who are adaptable and always willing to learn, those are the people who are going to succeed.
This deep dive has been amazing. We started with plastic packages, and we ended up talking about all sorts of stuff, like skilled manufacturing and AI, and even how to future-proof your career.
It's funny how these things all connect, isn't it?
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So for our listeners who are ready to take their job search to the next level, what's the one thing you hope they remember from this deep dive?
Don't underestimate how important transferable skills are. Really think about your experiences, both at work and in your personal life. What are the core skills you've learned? And how could those skills be useful in different jobs or industries? Don't be afraid to think outside the box and consider careers you might not have considered before.
It's all about being open to new possibilities and realizing that we're probably more skilled than we give ourselves credit for. And with tools like RoleCatcher, we can navigate this crazy job market because we've got the information and the resources we need to showcase our strengths. Well, that was a fascinating look at vacuum forming and how it relates to our own career journeys. Until next time, keep learning and keep those resumes updated.